The rain lashed against the tall windows of Elmsworth Abbey as the carriage wheels crunched over the gravel drive. Clara Cartwright pressed her gloved hands together, her heart beating faster with each turn of the wheels. This was no ordinary visit. Tonight, her mother had summoned the family to reveal the terms of a long-hidden inheritance. Elmsworth Abbey, with its sweeping stone corridors and vast oak doors, had stood for centuries. The portraits of stern-faced ancestors lined the great hall, their eyes following each new generation that walked beneath them. Clara felt the air grow colder as she stepped inside, her boots echoing against the flagstone floor. Lady Agatha Cartwright, her mother, sat at the head of the dining table, the firelight flickering against her lined face. The family had gathered in silence, Clara's elder brother Henry, her Aunt Mildred with her sharp tongue, and her cousin Victor, whose restless eyes seemed to hide more than they revealed. With a slow, deliberate motion, Lady Agatha produced an envelope sealed with the Cartwright crest. "This," she said, her voice carrying over the storm outside, "is your grandfather's final bequest. It concerns the Abbey, and all that lies within." The seal cracked, and the letter was read aloud. It spoke of hidden possessions within the walls of the Abbey, treasures bound to the family name, but with one warning. Whoever sought them must be prepared to uncover a truth that could destroy the Cartwrights forever. A tense silence fell over the table. Then, a gust of wind burst through the hall, extinguishing half the candles. The shadows deepened, and from the far end of the room, a portrait shifted on its hook with a slow, groaning sound. Clara's eyes fixed on it, the painting of a woman in black, whose pale hand rested on an open book. For the briefest moment, Clara thought she heard something. A whisper. So faint, it could have been the wind. Yet when she turned to Victor, she saw his lips pressed tightly together, his eyes wide. He had heard it too. The storm raged through the night, but Clara could hardly hear the thunder above the restless beating of her own heart. Long after the others had gone to bed, she remained awake, staring at the portrait that had shifted on its hook. The painted woman's dark eyes seemed almost alive, as though they were fixed solely on her. She lit a candle and slipped quietly down the corridor, her footsteps muffled by the thick carpets. The Abbey at night was a different place, each hallway stretched with shadows, each door a silent watcher. Clara found herself drawn towards the library, where the faintest draught of cold air seeped beneath the door. Inside, the vast room smelt of leather and dust. Rows of books towered above her, the shelves rising into the gloom. As Clara lifted her candle, a soft rustle broke the silence. She froze. Then, from the far end of the room, a page fluttered open on its own. Clara approached, her hand trembling. The book that lay open was not just any volume, it was the family register, a heavy tome bound in cracked leather. Her eyes moved down the list of names until she reached the final page. There, in ink that looked strangely fresh, a single line had been added. Eliza Cartwright, betrayer of the bloodline. The candle flame shivered as if recoiling from the words. Clara's breath caught. Eliza was the woman in the portrait, the mysterious figure in black. But how could her name have appeared, newly written, in a book sealed for decades? Before she could think further, a whisper stirred the air once more. This time, the voice was clearer, chilling and urgent. "Find me, before they do." Clara's candle guttered, nearly extinguishing, as a shadow shifted behind the shelves. Someone else was in the library with her. Clara's grip tightened on the candle holder, her breath shallow in the heavy silence. The library seemed to close in around her, the shelves towering like watchful sentinels. Somewhere between the rows of books, she was certain someone was moving. "Who's there?" she whispered, though her voice trembled too much to sound brave. No answer came. Only the faint creak of floorboards. She took a step forward, her candlelight casting long shapes on the spines of forgotten volumes. Then, suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Victor. His eyes glistened strangely, as though he had been waiting for her. "You should not be here," he said quietly, his voice low and urgent. The Abbey keeps its secrets for a reason. Clara held the heavy book against her chest. Did you see this? Her name, Eliza Cartwright, it was not there before. Victor's expression hardened. He glanced at the open page, then closed the register with a sharp motion. You must forget it. Some truths are poison. If you dig any further, you will not only endanger yourself, but all of us. Before Clara could reply, a loud crash echoed through the hall beyond the library doors. Both of them turned, startled. The sound was like glass shattering, followed by hurried footsteps. Victor's face paled. He extinguished Clara's candle with a swift gesture, plunging them into near darkness. Stay here, he hissed. Do not move until I return. And before she could protest, he was gone, swallowed by the shadows of the corridor. Clara stood frozen, her heart racing. In the silence that followed, she could hear it again, the whisper, curling through the air like smoke. Clara. This time, the voice spoke her name. Clara's skin prickled at the sound of her name, spoken in that chilling whisper. She spun towards the shelves, candleless and blind in the dark, her breath shallow as the shadows pressed in around her. She stretched out a hand, letting her fingers trail along the cracked spines of old books, until they caught against something unexpected. One of the wooden panels felt loose. Clara pushed gently, and to her astonishment, the panel gave way with a muted click. A narrow passage revealed itself, cloaked in dust and cobwebs, a stairwell vanishing into the depths of the Abbey. The whisper came again, stronger this time, as though urging her forward. Down here, come down here. Every instinct screamed at Clara to turn back. Yet curiosity gnawed at her, heavier than fear. She lifted the hem of her dress and stepped carefully into the hidden passage. The air was damp and smelled of earth, as if no one had walked there for centuries. The stairs wound steeply, leading to a chamber lit faintly by a crack in the stone ceiling. In the center stood a chest of blackened oak, carved with the Cartwright crest. Its lock was broken, as though someone had forced it open long ago. Clara knelt, her trembling fingers brushing the edge. Inside, beneath scraps of rotted fabric, lay a bundle of letters tied with faded ribbon. She lifted the first one, and in the wavering light, she read the name written across the paper. Eliza Cartwright. Her pulse quickened. These were Eliza's own letters. Proof, perhaps, of why she had been branded a betrayer. Clara slipped one open, but before she could read more than a line, a sound cut through the chamber. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, and approaching the hidden stair. Clara's fingers tightened around the bundle of letters as the footsteps grew louder, echoing down the hidden stairwell. She darted behind a stone pillar, clutching the papers to her chest, her heart racing wildly. The figure that emerged into the chamber carried a lantern. Its glow revealed the sharp profile of Aunt Mildred. Her eyes swept the room with an urgency that chilled Clara. So it is true, Mildred muttered, setting the lantern on the chest. The letters still remain. Foolish Agatha never destroyed them. Clara dared not move. She watched as Mildred opened one of the letters with hands that trembled more from rage than age. Her lips pressed into a thin line as she read. Then, in a sudden burst of anger, she tore the page in half. No one must ever know, she hissed to herself. Not while the Abbey stands. Clara's breath caught. These letters clearly held a secret grave enough to terrify her aunt. Gathering her courage, Clara stepped out of the shadows. Aunt Mildred, she said softly, her voice trembling but steady enough to make the woman freeze. Mildred turned sharply, the lantern casting long, harsh shadows across her lined face. Her expression shifted from shock to fury. You should not be here, Mildred spat. Do you have any idea what danger you bring upon us all? Clara held the bundle tighter. I need to know the truth. What did Eliza do? For a moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the drip of water from the stones above. Then Mildred leaned closer, her eyes burning. Eliza betrayed more than the family, child. She betrayed the crown itself. Before Clara could speak, the lantern flickered violently and went out, plunging them both into darkness. From the top of the stairwell, another set of footsteps began to descend. The chamber plunged into darkness, the silence broken only by the steady descent of footsteps. Clara's pulse thundered in her ears as she clutched the bundle of letters close. Beside her, Aunt Mildred's breath grew shallow, trembling with a fear Clara had never seen in her before. A faint glow soon appeared, the outline of another lantern swinging slowly as its bearer reached the bottom step. The light revealed not a servant nor a member of the household, but a man cloaked in black, his face partly hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. Neither Clara nor Mildred spoke. The man lowered his lantern, casting its glow across the chest and the scattered fragments of torn paper. His lips curled into a thin smile. "So," he said softly, his voice smooth as silk yet edged with menace, "the Abbey has finally given up its secrets." Mildred stepped forward, her hand outstretched. "You should not be here. Leave this place at once." But the man ignored her. His gaze fixed upon Clara, sharp and unrelenting. "Those letters do not belong to you," he said. "Give them to me, and no harm will come." Clara's grip tightened. Every instinct told her not to obey. She shook her head, though her legs trembled beneath her. "They are mine now," she whispered. The man's smile deepened, though it carried no warmth. He reached into his cloak and drew out a slender blade, the steel glinting in the lantern light. "If you will not surrender them willingly," he said, stepping closer, "then I shall take them." Clara backed against the stone wall, her breath quick and shallow. Behind her, there was no escape, only cold, unyielding stone. And as the stranger's shadow loomed over her, the whisper returned, urgent and piercing. "Do not trust him, Clara." Clara returned to the library with trembling hands, the slip of paper from Samuel burning in her palm. She lit only one candle, unwilling to alert the others that she was awake. The portrait stared down at her, its painted eyes seeming almost to glisten in the flickering light. She unfolded the note once more. The words were blunt, hurriedly written, "Your life is not your own. Ask the portrait, and you will see." The script was unmistakably Samuel's. A cold shiver traveled down her spine as she read it aloud in a whisper. The portrait responded. This time not with a faint murmur, but with a clearer voice, carrying through the silence of the room. It spoke of betrayal, of a family torn apart by greed and blood. It spoke of Edmund Cartwright, an ancestor whose name had long been erased from the family records. Clara's pulse raced as she listened. The voice told her Edmund had been disinherited for plotting against his own brother. But worse still, it hinted that the Cartwright name had been built on deception. Clara could barely breathe. Could this be the truth her family had hidden for centuries? Behind her, the door creaked. Clara spun round, her candle almost extinguishing. Samuel stood in the threshold, pale and hesitant. He stepped closer, his face shadowed. "I tried to keep it from you," he said quietly. "But the house will not let it rest. It is my family too, Clara. And I fear what we will uncover." Clara felt torn between trust and suspicion. Was Samuel truly an ally, or was he guiding her into danger? His note suggested urgency, yet his eyes betrayed fear. The portrait whispered again, louder this time, as if urging them both to listen. Its painted lips seemed almost to move. Clara tightened her grip on the candle, her heart thundering. Then came the words that froze her blood, "One of you must pay the price for the sins of the past." The next morning dawned grey and heavy, clouds pressing low over Elmsworth Abbey. Clara had not slept. The words from the portrait haunted her, "One of you must pay the price." They echoed in her head like a curse. At breakfast, the family gathered in stiff silence. Lady Beatrice fussed over the tea, Lord Cartwright buried himself in the newspaper, and Samuel sat opposite Clara, his eyes never quite meeting hers. Only Clara could hear the faint hum of whispers still clinging to her ears. After the table had cleared, Samuel approached her discreetly in the corridor. "There is something you must see," he murmured, gesturing for her to follow. His hand trembled as he pushed open a narrow servant's door that had long been shut. Dust billowed into the air as they descended a stone stairway hidden behind the paneled wall. The air grew colder with each step. Clara's candle cast trembling shadows across damp bricks and rusted chains that clung to the walls. At the bottom, they reached a small chamber, windowless, silent, and forgotten. Yet on a cracked pedestal in the center lay an old leather-bound journal, its cover scarred with time. Samuel reached for it, but Clara stopped him. The journal seemed to pulse with something more than age, as though it carried the Abbey's lingering sorrow. Clara opened it carefully. Inside were letters, confessions written in Edmund Cartwright's hand. They spoke of treachery, of a stolen inheritance, and of blood spilled within the Abbey walls. One letter was addressed to the future heir who dares to seek the truth. Clara's hands shook as she read it aloud. It revealed that Edmund had hidden a key, the key to another chamber beneath the Abbey, where the ultimate proof of the family's betrayal was sealed. Samuel's breath quickened. "This is what the portrait wanted you to find. But if the truth is exposed, the Cartwright name will fall. Do you not see, Clara? Someone in this house will never allow that." Clara turned, her candlelight catching a movement at the far end of the chamber. A shadow slipped past the stone archway, vanishing into the darkness. Someone had been listening. The sound of a lock clicked shut above them. Clara froze, her stomach tightening. They were trapped. The chamber fell into silence after the lock slid shut above them. Clara gripped the journal tightly, her heart pounding. The shadows pressed closer, the damp air heavy with dread. Samuel struck the walls with his fists, shouting for release, but no answer came. Only their own echoes mocked them. Clara's mind raced. Someone in the Abbey had heard everything. Someone had decided the truth must remain buried. She turned back to the journal and scanned the final pages. There, in Edmund Cartwright's hand, lay a confession more damning than she had imagined. He wrote of a murder disguised as an accident, a brother poisoned at a banquet, and the inheritance stolen under cover of night. The Abbey's wealth was born of blood. Her candle sputtered as if recoiling from the words. Clara whispered, "This is why the portrait whispers. The Abbey itself is crying for justice." Samuel froze, his gaze fixed on a loose stone at the chamber's edge. Together they prized it free. Behind it was a rusted key, ancient yet still whole. Clara knew at once, it was the key Edmund had hidden. They hurried to the far wall, where a door half buried in rubble stood. With trembling hands, Clara turned the key. The lock groaned, and the door creaked open. Beyond was a passage descending deeper into the earth. The stench of mold and iron filled the air. They stepped into the darkness, the candle barely lighting the way. At the end of the corridor lay a coffin, its lid carved with the Cartwright crest. Dust coated its surface, yet the air around it felt alive, charged with unspoken wrath. Clara placed her hand on the wood. The whispers grew deafening now, overlapping voices pleading, accusing, condemning. Samuel pulled her back, his face pale. The coffin shifted on its own, the lid scraping open just enough to reveal bones shrouded in tatters of fine cloth. But what froze Clara's blood was the parchment clutched in the skeletal hand. She reached for it, her fingers brushing cold bone. The parchment bore the true will of the Cartwright estate, naming Edmund, not his brother, as the rightful heir. Everything the family owned, every title, every stone of Elmsworth Abbey, had been stolen. Clara staggered back, the truth crushing her. The whispers surged into a single voice that filled the chamber, now the debt must be paid. The candle blew out. Darkness swallowed them whole.